Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and joining me tonight, once again, Grapevine. Good evening, Grapevine. Have you recovered?
I have. I was infuriated and disappointed and frustrated last night, but I'm down and we push on.
Well, I haven't recovered, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Also joining us tonight, back for another appearance, our Demonland's tech guru, Nasher. Good evening, Nasher. How are you?
Good evening, everybody. I'm recovered, maybe. I was pretty upset last night, but that's how it goes, I guess.
You at least have being in Tassie, you have the option of throwing the remote control at the TV. Whereas we can only throw our footy records at the...
Usually with nighttime games, I'm trying to be a little bit quiet and not disturb the whole household. And I really struggle to turn it off. I think for some reason in my brain, the option of just turning it off and walking away doesn't seem to be open to me, unfortunately.
Well, it's sort of watching it on TV. It's a lot easier to turn it off and walk away than it is to sort of get up and have to walk through the walk of shame through the crowd.
Yeah, it's not as easy as you'd think. To be honest, I always feel compelled to watch the end. I don't know whether that's just from particularly through those dark years where you're always just sort of watching, hoping just to see something that might make you feel a little bit good at the end of the game. But the last two weeks, there hasn't been much. It's just been fruitless watching.
Well, we'll talk about tonight's game. Last night's game. If anyone wants to call in and vent, I know people want to vent. We've seen it on the website the last 2 weeks. Feel free to give us a call. We love taking calls. 2 ways you can get us: 03-9016-3666, or give us a call on Skype, Demonland31. Just search for us and we'll bring you on as soon as you call in. I would love to hear from other Demonlanders, and I'm sure there are plenty of people wanting to vent. I can see we've got 91 listeners at the moment, so give us a call. Grapevine, what went wrong? Or is that too broad of a thing to ask at this stage?
No, look, we're dominating for large periods of the game, but not converting it into scoreboard pressure. We're exerting a lot of effort and energy to get a score, and then it seems we just give it straight back really quickly. The last couple of weeks, and particularly last night, looked constipated. We've gone from a sort of freewheeling, exciting, relatively high-scoring team to playing a sort of a turgid, down-the-line, low-risk game of footy. So I'm not sure whether that's the instruction or, whether this is the structure issue of not having T-Mac there, but something's not clicking at the moment, that's for sure, because the scoring has just dried up completely, even though we are dominating for large periods.
Yeah, we really did struggle to score. We did, what was it, 1-5 at quarter time. So,
yep.
We had the scoring opportunities, but we're not making it count. But
they're not good opportunities. We're going wide and kicking from outside 50, whereas in previous years, certainly in the last year of Roos's tenure and even last year, we're able to create good scoring opportunities close to goal, where you're a better chance of capitalising.
I'll ask Nasher because he watched it on TV. Did you notice that we were going up the one side of the field every single time, and we didn't venture out of that area? Could you see that from kickouts? And
that's exactly what I saw, and it reminded me of Neil's era footy, really. Like it just that no willingness to try and create an opportunity. It was always kick long down the line and lose the ball at half forward. It just seemed to be like, every time you saw it, you think this is exactly what happened last time and it didn't work then, so why do we keep doing that? It's It's very frustrating. Yeah, especially when you're watching on TV. The other problem is you actually don't know what they're kicking to until it comes into the frame. So when you sort of start to be able to anticipate what's going to happen even before you can even see it on the screen, that's when you know that it's not working as a TV viewer. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is that Richmond, I think, plugged the middle well. So to a great extent, they stopped us from, doing the switch and trying to get a bit of a run through. But the times that we did try to transition quickly, we were very fumbly, missed kicks into the man on the mark, and all kinds of sort of skill errors. So, not pretty.
I was just reading earlier, George on the outer. I was reading his match review, and he was he sort of made some comparisons with last week, and we haven't improved at all. We've done a lot of talking, but we're not we're talking the talk, but not walking the walk, so to speak. Not all talk and no action. He said the first quarter last week we had 10 shots on goal last week in the first quarter, only 7 this week. 8 goals for the game this week, 6 last week. It's very similar, like in terms of our scoring, and have the opposition. We just rolled over again in the last quarter.
The effort was better last night.
Yes.
It was much more sustained, and I thought our pressure and intensity for most of the game was really good. The fade-outs in the past 2 weeks are disappointing and potentially worrisome, that heads just go down and concede a stack of goals at the end when the game's over. It's bad for percentage, and that's going to be important at the end of the year.
Well, the coach said afterwards that this was a huge, not huge, but a step forward. I don't see it as that at all.
Look, I think it's harsh to compare this game, this game this week against the previous week against Hawthorn. I think the effort. I agree with Great, but the effort was definitely there this week. But by the same token, I don't know that I can stomach watching another game where we just give up easy goals, especially at the end of that game. I was actually pretty measured about it right up until that last 15 minutes, where they just went bang, bang, bang with goals. That was really, it was 15 minutes of play that upset me yesterday. It wasn't the whole game. Whereas with that game against Hawthorn, really it was the whole second half was a debacle.
And even in this game, we managed to sort of get within almost a goal. And I think had we got ourselves in front, maybe things might have been different. But yeah, that 15 minutes at the end was just abysmal. If we talk about some of the players that let us down, I think in the last, Neil Bullen, James Harms, Billy Stretch, Neil Bullen does, and Harms, they do a lot of running around the ground, but I just don't think they're having any impact at all. And Billy Stretch, a couple of his fumbles were, and it's not just him, we had a lot of players just fumbling, overrunning the ball, just some comical stuff, and it just sort of kept happening, and these guys are meant to be highly skilled players.
I think probably part of the problem is we've still got too many of those types of players in our side, really. Even if you look through history, there's even the premiership sides have those players, those sort of 18 to 22nd best players who are limited, and I've got no problem with them being in the side, but I think the problem is when you've still got probably sort of 5 or 6 of them in your side like we do, if they all have poor games at once, or most of them have poor games at once, this is the result.
Yeah, 100%, and they've, for the most part, they've all been poor all year so far. So that bottom 6 is really struggling when we need, at least half of them to be firing on any day. You can't sort of carry 4 or 5 players like that out of form. Yeah. And I think they are. They're all terribly out of form at the moment. And it'll be interesting to see selection because there's not a whole lot to replace them necessarily.
I think last week you probably would have put Jake Melksham in the same category.
Yep.
But I think maybe he's an example of why they get persevered with. Maybe, I mean, Melksham's probably a bit of a different case because we know that he can score goals when he turns it on. But I think if we were winning games, the contexts of our conversation around these players might look a little bit different as well.
Yeah, so like with Melksham, you're 100% right because if Melksham would have played a game again like he'd been playing the previous weeks, he might have been dropped. But what do we do with a guy like Jeffy Garlett, who in the first week there were people calling for his head and then comes out against Brisbane and plays amazing? And, the last 2 weeks he's barely been cited. What do we do with a player like him? He's the type of guy that can just turn it on, but how many weeks in a row do you give players of consecutive not doing anything, even though you know that they can? It's a tough one.
My view is that with a guy like Jeffy in particular, unless you really think there's an attitude issue or an effort issue, you would just hang in there with him because you know that he can and will eventually turn a game on its head.
Yeah.
I mean, he does. He always does. He's done it. Even when he had a sort of down patch mid last year, he came back and had a few games where he really had a big impact. So with Jeffy, it's a case by case basis. But with him in particular, unless I was really concerned with his efforts, I'd be inclined to cut him maximum slack.
Yep. Agree.
I thought we'll talk about maybe some players who did stand up. Omac, the improvement continues there. From going, he was the whipping boy last year, and I don't think he's put a foot wrong. Did a great job on Rewalt, and I think he's improving week by week.
I thought the back line actually gelled together, probably the best it has all year. We restricted them to 8 goals, in the first 3 quarters, which is a very good effort. There were a few occasions where it was a complete shambles and everybody flew for the same ball and we got scored against. But I thought Lever played his best game and showed exactly why we got him over. And I thought Hibberd was back to the kind of form that we saw from him last year too. So I think it was an improved performance from the back six.
Yeah, Lever definitely had his best game for us, and that's exactly that game is exactly what we got him for, and I know we're going to see a lot more of that. So hopefully he's found his feet, and I agree with Hibberd as well. Probably played his best game, was back to that form. That effort where he made that spoil and mirrored that Hogan's Heroes Mark guy who fell on his head and then got back up. Just fantastic.
That was fantastic. I agree. But Hibberd, when he was playing his best last year, was getting a lot of the ball. I still think we're not really seeing that yet. Certainly the defensive efforts and the helping his teammates and definitely that spoil first rate, and I guess that's the first function of a defender. But I still think there's a way to go. I'd like to see him driving us out of halfback again like he was last year. We sort of haven't seen that really this year yet. Yeah,
I think last year he led on average metres gained for the league, and we're probably yet to see that, but we know that he can do that. So I'm not worried about Michael Hibberd. Jesse, once again, I wish we had 2 of him because it seemed that every time he went up the ground, we needed Jesse down forward as well because he gets a lot of the ball up the ground. But I think where he does his best work is, we D2 of him. Simple as that. that's silly talk.
It's interesting though. I was just watching AFL 360, and David King was talking about Hogan and Petracca, and the mix of forward and midfield time for both of them. And he seemed to think that we've got it right with Hogan at the moment, but Petracca maybe not, and that we're not getting as much bang for our buck as we did from Christian last year.
So what was he saying? Should play more
time forward. Yeah. Yep.
I think the thing about Petracca though is that he's one of the few players we have playing through the midfield who doesn't manage to get smothered or tackled or anything like that. When he gets the ball, you can actually have confidence that he's going to be able to get it through the midfield and into the forward line. I think we've come to sort of hope that he was going to be a player, and he may still yet be, like a sort of fireworks player like Dusty Martin or someone like that. But what he has proven to be is somebody who's really strong, doesn't fall over, doesn't kick into the man on the mark, he always gets the ball away. And it sounds simple, but in our side at the moment, that seems to be a fairly uncommon skill.
Yeah, no, I agree in terms of the comparison to Martin and someone like Dangerfield as well. As you say, very strong, and so very hard to bring down and stop.
Well, you also got to remember wasn't Martin drafted the same year as Trent Trengove and Scully, so he's had a couple more years on Petracca. So I think Christian
absolutely.
will get there.
That wasn't intended as criticism. No. It was just just trying to point out that he's got strengths that we need in our midfield at the moment. And if our forward line's suffering, then maybe there's a point there. But I think I agree with your point, Andy, about how when Hogan gets the ball, he seems to be looking for Hogan in the forward line, which is sort of, a bit of it's a bit of an impossibility. I reckon hopefully if Sam Wiedemann can continue the form he's in, or continue the form that he's been showing in the VFL as a marking forward, that should help. And I think T-Mac coming into the side will definitely make a difference there. But yeah, when Hogan's got the ball on the wing, the problem is that he's got it on the wing, there's no forward for him to kick it to. So.
Yeah. And we know Wiedemann, he can take those marks. He wasn't taking them forward last night. He took a great mark down back, and I think that's the type of mark he can take. So once he starts clunking those and starts taking them, look out. But got to start taking those marks. But I think he did enough in this game. He was doing the rucking duties. I'm not convinced as him as a backup ruckman, but I think he's the only, at the moment, without T-Mac in the side, I think he's the only one that we've got to cover him, to cover Max.
The interesting question is what happens when T-Mac is back, and will Simon go for, effectively the three tall forwards in Hogan, McDonald and Wiedemann. Hogan's obviously going to spend some of that time in the midfield, but will Wiedemann stay in the side when McDonald comes back?
It depends when McDonald's back. There was talk last week that he could be back as early as this week. I don't know. I'm not sure where he's at in terms of the injury. And remember,
they were saying either this week or next week. Yeah,
and we've got a small turnaround as well to this week, so I think they could maybe wield the axe just to bring in fresh legs. I don't know. What do you think?
Look, I reckon it would be. If you'd asked me last week, I would have said I reckon that T-Mac and Wiedemann are competing for the same spot. But after we had a pretty poor. Well, we finished the game poorly this week. Wiedemann was one of the better players, or one of the more promising players at least on the night, and Goodwin even said so in his press conference. If T-Mac's ready this week, it would be a pretty harsh lesson to say, "Hey, you did a really good job, but get out because T-Mac's back." I don't know. I think I think on that performance, you would owe him at least one crack at attempting to function in the team with T-Mac and Hogan.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm a little bit down at the moment. Just I said early in the year that we were a team that I think we can beat anyone, and we could also lose to anyone. But at the moment, I don't know if we can beat anyone. Certainly, I don't think we. I think the top 6 teams, I don't think we're anywhere near at the moment. I'm struggling to see how we're going to beat some teams. Or it was a perfect opportunity this week. We're playing Essendon, who are just as down in the dumps as we are. So
it can turn around really quickly, Andy, and it doesn't take much to turn around. It's only a few weeks ago we were a shanked Max Gawn kick away from knocking the Cats off. We scored, 15 or 16 goals that day, or 14 goals. So it looks grim at the minute. But, and I actually think we might even struggle on for a couple more weeks. But I think it's going to click into place. And once Viney comes back in, I think things are going to pick up.
We've got a massive month ahead of us in terms of, we've got extremely winnable games. Perhaps not winnable for the D's at the moment, but we've got Essendon this week, who aren't travelling well.
They were terrible today.
I didn't see any of the game, and I imagine from the scoreline, we got St Kilda after that. Winnable. Suns, winnable. When I say winnable, it's losable as well. And Carlton. So we're playing bottom teams coming into the next few weeks. This is our chance to turn around. But if we don't, we're in a lot of trouble. How do we dig out of that hole?
You got to remember that we're a few minutes into the last quarter last night against the reigning premiers. We're only 2.5 goals down. And if not for some fumbles and slip-ups and other comical errors, which then sort of cost us some quick goals back and took the momentum out, it really could have been game on.
I really don't think we worry about how we will dig ourselves out of a hole that we might be in 4 weeks' time if we lose the next 4 games. I think that's I know you're a pessimist, Andy, but that's taking the extreme view, I reckon, mate.
Well, I would love the team to prove me wrong. It's not, my pessimism hasn't been helped by the performances. If you'd like to join us, give us a call 039016 3666 or on Skype Demonland 31. Maybe talk me down off the ledge.
We're in the same position last year. We were 2-3 going into the Essendon game last year, so way too early for the doom and gloom.
But you know what? That Essendon game last year, I thought we were very lucky to win that. In the second quarter, I think that Danaher kicked about 4 or 5 behinds. He was, his typical crap kicking self. I think we were lucky to be in it, and then we turned it on and able to win the game. But I don't know. Someone's going to have to talk me off a ledge here. Well, any other bright sparks for us? Was there anyone that you were happy with the performance of? Because I wasn't.
I think that the main positive, we've already touched on it really, but it was the back line. It was good to see Omac, Lever, Hibberd gel. And it's actually, in the weeks before, they didn't seem to have any cohesion as a backline. So that's an improvement. I just really, Maxi Gawn, I'd love to know how we seemed unable to capitalise on Maxi's dominance in the ruck. It doesn't at the moment. It just does not seem to be leading to clearances. And we've got enough. It's not like we don't have clearance players. Like we've got, Jones is spending considerable time in the middle, and obviously we've got Clary there. I'm interested in any sort of thoughts on that. I saw him actually do a few dumb things last night, which I sort of don't normally associate him with dumb things. Like I saw him smash it forward at one point to three
he did it,
Richmond players.
He did it a few times.
What? It's just, I don't understand that. That just seems pretty fundamental. Like, don't punch it forward unless your players are there.
Yeah. He did that a few times.
How do we actually get that? But how do we get those taps into? How do we turn those into clearances?
That's the big question. That's really one of the big questions to come out of the game, because 2 years ago when Max was getting the sort of hit-outs that he is now, he was putting it down Viney's throat. And we were just, the number of times that we'd taken away from a stoppage was incredible, and it's just not happening. So I don't know what the answer to that is.
How far away is Viney? That's the question. I think I'd play him with a crook foot at the moment.
I would not play him with a crook foot. I think we've learned the folly of that. Surely. Apparently, they said that he and T-Mac were pretty much on par in terms of their recovery, but because Tommy had done the pre-season, but Viney hadn't, he had to get some K's in his legs first. That was the only difference.
Well, I'd put him on a treadmill 24/7 at the moment. Yeah, I think we really do need him. Obviously, we don't really want to bring him back until he's cherry ripe. But we do miss him. Not saying that had he played, we would have won. But yeah, he brings a lot to the table. We're talking about one quick thing. Grapevine, you mentioned it earlier, the 4 men flying for the ball, and we still did that a number of times, and not having anyone down, particularly not having anyone back behind the pack. It's really frustrating to watch.
It happens so often that the Melbourne supporters are actually calling it out before they even go up. So the ball's coming in and people are like, don't all go up, don't all go up. And the players can't hear us and they just go up. But it's incredible that it still seems to happen. So there's a communication breakdown there.
D. Zephyr wants to know what we think of what we thought of Brayshaw's game. I actually thought it was really good. I thought he had a positive impact on the game. Got plenty of the ball. Goes in when it's his turn, as the saying goes. I thought he was good, but I saw a bit of mixed feelings on the forums though. I saw that he actually copped a bit of criticism for his game. They put him in the group of the fumbles and Smothers and those players, but I didn't see that. I must have not been looking when those bits happened. I thought he was good.
He had one stumble on the outer wing, and they were able to take the ball away. But aside from that, I thought his game was really good. So maybe people were referring to that. But he does have his detractors on Demonland. Some people just do not rate him at all, and I don't understand that viewpoint. I've been impressed with him in the majority of games he's played since his debut, and he just needs a run at it. And I think he's a valuable contributor. It's interesting that he doesn't play in the middle at all. I mean, he was at half back for the most part. Why isn't he used in the centre?
That's a good question. I don't know. You would think that I think if my memory of the training reports over summer are correct, he was mostly in the backline group. So I guess that's where they want him playing. But you would think someone who played all of his junior footy in the middle Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, there's probably only room for so many people in the middle, I guess. But yeah, it's a bit of a head scratcher. You'd think he'd be worthy of a few minutes there, wouldn't you?
Mm.
Now, is it too early in the year to talk about the training camp? Whether there's any flow on because of that is perhaps reason for some of our performances this year, or not being mentally strong enough? Is it too early to make that call and that correlation?
Yes, it's too early.
I don't know how you could say. I think it's always going to be too early to say because you just don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't really rate the discussion on it, to be honest. I think it's most likely a non-event. These sorts of things are usually non-events.
Yeah, I would have thought unless we had completely fell off the cliff and only won, a handful of games, I don't see how you could rationally think it's the cause of anything.
All right, well, we'll table that one for a further discussion later in the year. Hopefully we don't have to come back to it.
Now, can I just raise one thing that came up? That came up yesterday, or the night before. Sorry, so
I think
Monday night.
I think you're just about to talk about what I was going to bring up next. Go on.
And this is the issue of Brendan McCartney
supposedly
being demoted to the bench, according to Tom Norris on Fox Footy, I think. Now, firstly, the story didn't get picked up at all, so I think it was wrong fundamentally. Even if there was a change and he's gone from the box to the bench, it wasn't a demotion, and it's not the result of tension between Goodwin and McCartney. But Tom Norris also does the club's podcast, so isn't there a conflict of interest there? And why is this guy making up stories about the club?
Well, is he making up stories, or is he getting his information from somewhere, from someone at the club? You would think if he's got some official role with the club, I'm not sure if it's a paid position or he's doing it for fun or whatever, but a story like that, you don't just pull out of your bum. Well, we know that some journalists sometimes do, but...
No, but what I'm saying is that the change might have been made, but it's completely innocuous.
Yeah.
And whereas he's put a spin on it that there's... Well, and this is another story, is that there's some sort of tension between Goodwin and McCartney, and there's no evidence of that. And I think, knowing the way the media works, no one jumped on the story at all. And had there been substance to it, it would have been the biggest story going around yesterday, because a breakup between a coach and a senior assistant going into the one of the biggest games of the year, which last night was, that would have been the biggest story of the day yesterday had there been substance to it.
It raises a lot of questions, doesn't it? Because he's this Tom fellow obviously has he must have connections at the club, because the club utilises his services for the podcast. I'm assuming he's not actually an employee of the club,
no.
Because you would think if he was, he wouldn't be for too much longer. So it seems pretty bold-faced for somebody who is obviously connected at the club to be publishing that kind of article. It's just it's a bit of an unusual one, really.
I mean, the club had to come out the next day and put out a statement saying it's crap. And I see here that Drunken 167 says that the whole demotion to the bench wasn't a demotion at all, and they put him on the bench to try and get better communication to the players. So I hope someone at the club gave him a talking to yesterday, because as I say, is just completely wrong.
How can the club continue to use the services of a person like this who's clearly prepared to just throw that kind of crap out there?
There was another thing that he dropped, didn't he, a few weeks ago about Goodwin as well? What was that story, Grapeviney?
About Goodwin? There's been a few Melbourne stories. One was the offering of the resignation.
Yes, that one.
Over the camp.
Yep.
And then there was also the Hogan and Brayshaw to WA.
Yes.
Now, the resignation story was knocked on the head straight away.
Yep.
And it turns out it was said in jest or something.
Yep.
And the Hogan story, well, anyone can do that at any time of the night or day. It's an ongoing story forever, but completely unnecessary and very early, given that what Jesse signed, was it 12 months ago or something?
Yeah.
And nothing to the Brayshaw story at all, except that his brothers are over there. So, he doesn't have a good record, and I would have thought the club would be questioning the having him on the podcast, because he doesn't seem to have the club's interests at heart. And look, he shouldn't. That's not a journo's role, and that's why there's I see a conflict of interest.
Well, watch this space with that one. I perhaps we'll move on to talk of. We can talk about Casey's game in a sec. If you do want to comment about the game, you want to vent. We're here to take your calls and take your venting. 0390163666. That's 0390163666, or Skype us Demonland31. The Casey game. It was also an interesting. We had Cam Peterson kicking 5 goals. Cam Peterson, what does he have to do to get a game? Or do you think now with Wiedemann playing all right, and we'll probably give him another go, Tom McDonald coming back in the next week or two, can Cam Peterson break his way in to the team? Or is that, he's not going to be able to do it, considering what we've got to come in, what we've got in, and to come back in?
I think he's been positioned as a sort of specialist stopgap. I don't think he'll be picked this week. I wouldn't pick him. I mean, and it's nothing against him per se. I just think you can't have him and Wiedemann in the same team, because it's just too big a chance that one or both of them will deliver nothing, because they are both capable of that happening. I think as long as Wiedemann is looking decent, you'd have to persist with him in that role. And it's I don't think that would surprise Cam. I think he's said in the past that he's sort of well aware of where he sits in things, and that's life. He's managed to build a pretty good career out of it. But I've also got no doubt that he will be called upon again throughout the year, because there will be a need. It's just that it's not yet.
Yeah, and that's just footy. Sometimes you can be playing great footy in the twos, but that doesn't mean automatic call up to the ones, for reasons of team balance or matchups or whatever it might be. And as Nasher said, I think he understands where he's where he fits into the bigger picture, Cam. So he'll continue working hard if he's in the twos, and try and make the most of his opportunities if he gets a call up in the ones.
There weren't a lot of. There's only a couple of Demon listed players playing on the weekend for Casey. I'm not really seeing. I'm just having a look at the stats here of some of the players, and I don't know if anyone there will get a call up. Peterson by far the best of the Melbourne listed players there. I guess Hannon is there. He had 15. He had 19 disposals, kicked a goal. Bug only had 5 disposals and 1 mark, so I don't see him coming in.
Well, someone's got to come in for Dean Kent.
Yep.
And I would have thought that's going to
probably
be
Hannon.
Fritsch.
Well, did Fritsch play on the weekend?
No, but they may well
have held him back.
Yep.
Yeah.
Might be resting him.
Yeah, he wasn't there. So perhaps either Fritsch or Hannon, you would say, to replace him.
Lewis is back, I think.
Is Lewis back? Okay. It'll be interesting to see if they bring him back.
You'd have to bring Lewis back. I don't think you can. I mean, I understand, what the criticisms of Lewis. I understand that. Like, he's old, he's getting slow, and he falls over a lot and all that. I don't know that he's yet a worse option. Or, I don't think that players like Hannon and so forth could claim to have gone past him yet.
Yeah, the other one that I saw, Charlie Spargo kicked 2 goals. I didn't see any of the game though, but he's probably, some of those younger guys are still probably a little bit way off.
Drunken 167 says that Bug got injured, so that would explain his small numbers, and also points out that Tim Smith was an emergency, so he might be in the calculations too. It's a short break, so it'll be interesting to see what happens at selection.
Yeah, well, I can't see us making a heap of changes, so it's going to be interesting.
I think you've got
Stretch get another week.
I think you'd see at least 2. Sorry, did you say something about Stretch, Grape?
Yeah. I said, does Stretch get another week?
Gee,
I don't think he can.
He's really at a crossroads, isn't he? That was he was hopeless the other day. I thought, like, he's got a lot of things to like. He looks like he should be a good user of the ball at least. He certainly spreads, which is something that we sort of lacked on the weekend, but he's so unclean with the ball. It's just, I don't know whether it's just nerves or what it is, but he's one player that I find it really hard to have confidence in.
He had two really bad fumbles. One in particular running, the ball was in front of him. He just couldn't pick it up, and it was really disappointing because, that was an opportunity to pick the ball up running in, and he's the type of guy that could run in and kick a goal, and it was at a time in the game where, we really needed it. So, And
look, he and I'm not sort of questioning his intensity or effort, but his tackling is not strong either. And I don't know, people sort of said that he was brought in for his pace. I mean, he's not particularly quick. I know he is good at the spread, as Nasher said, but it's not. He doesn't have blistering pace. So I agree, he's at the crossroads. I don't see. I'm not sure what he offers really.
I think maybe the only thing is he is only 21. It feels like he's been around the club for a really long time, but this is only season number 4. I don't know. Maybe we're just being impatient.
Yep.
If you've got any insights on who you think should come in, 0390163666 or Demonland31 on Skype. Give us a call, let us know. I think it's going to be an interesting selection table this week. It is a short turnaround. Our opposition also has a shorter turnaround because they played today. It's going to be interesting.
Any or all of Stretch, Harms and Nibbler could conceivably be omitted.
but it's all about who comes in for them.
Yep.
You think Lewis will come in. T-Mac, it all depends on how how ready he is. But then I'm just looking at Casey. I'm struggling to see who else comes in. Can you? Drunken in the chat room said Tim Smith, but who do you take out for him? You can't take out Stretch and put in Smith. You've got to go sort of like for like, I think.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got T-Mac, and Lewis, I think two changes should be enough, especially if there's not anybody kicking the door down at Casey, as they say. How do you guys reckon Bernie Vince is going? Zephyr in the chat room asked if we'd rest Vince, but I wouldn't rest Vince. Another player who seems to cop more criticism on the forums than I think is warranted, perhaps because he's playing a different role to the ones he's played in the past, but I actually think he's been better this season than I was expecting. Still gets plenty of the ball, makes the odd mistake, but who doesn't? It's pretty tough. I think he's still comfortably best 22. I wouldn't rest him unless I thought there was concerns over his fitness, but I think that's more likely to be a question for young players. Thoughts?
Yeah, I just think Vince and Lewis in the same team in the back line makes us look a little slow, for my mind. I don't know. I think Vince is a better forward. I've been saying it, but that's not going to happen. They're playing him in the back line, and that's where he's going to play. But I think his best days are behind him.
People also fall victim to howler syndrome, which is the turnovers in the back line end up costing goals. And so they really stand out. So that's why Vince gets called out, and Tyson for that kick across goal, which ended up going 40 metres backwards yesterday. But yeah, I actually think he's been all right for most of the year, Vince. So, but to answer the question, I wouldn't know. I can have Vince and Lewis in the same team. It's not going to be for too much longer, but for the moment, yes.
Drunken's just reminded me that I was against him in our fantasy football league this week, and he beat me by 41 points. Thanks. Just really topped off my week. Doodle D says Spargo in like Richmond's Higgins, just to inject some youth and energy. Crummer instead of Harms and A and B. Yeah, I'm all for changes like that. I don't see anything wrong with that. Maybe just bring someone in that might add some spark.
There's been
pretty.
You go, Nasher.
They'd have to have the VFL form behind them. I admit I don't follow Casey other than reading the threads because I live too far away to be able to watch them. But I think if it's a young player, you would really want some pretty solid VFL form. We're past the stage of our development where we need to just bring in kids for the sake of it. Sort of lukewarm on that idea.
That hasn't stopped people in the changes thread. I've seen all names suggested already this week. So some people have called for Petty to be included, others for Oscar Baker, so and Spargo. So
we could just swap the whole team around.
Sorry.
We could just swap the whole team. Just replace the entire team.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the delistings thread has come up as well, and half the squad is going to be delisted too. So prepare for a huge clean out at the end of the year, according to Demonland.
Well, I actually saw the changes versus Essendon thread came up very early, even before I'm not. I think even before the game last night started. So
that I noted that was the first that the changes thread actually came before the game had even happened. Yeah,
we've got a few crystal ball gazers on Demonland, that's for sure. But look, you can understand the frustration of the supporters. We're sort of, we've had that many false dawns at this club. You can sort of see people are frustrated that that perhaps this is another false dawn.
I take the view that you've got to be really careful just projecting forward what you've seen forever. You see it in footy circles all the time. Whenever people are forecasting the ladder at the end of the year, in round one when they're forecasting the end of the year ladder, it always looks very similar to how the season finished last year. Look, I don't believe that it's a false dawn until it's proven to be a false dawn. Really, maybe I'm not much of a crystal ball gazer in that regard, but I'm not prepared to give up on a good season this year until it's clearly not going to happen. And I think 5 rounds in, where we've had 2 pretty good games, 1 decent game, and 2 poor ones, and we've got a coach who's in his second season, I'm not quite prepared to call false dawn just yet.
Well, there's a lot of people calling for the head of the coach just 5 rounds into his second season.
That's just nonsense at this stage, I reckon.
And if you accept that there's a false dawn after 5 rounds, then what? You've got to accept that Collingwood are rising this year, and North Melbourne are also going to be playing off, in finals. We're 5 rounds in, so it's way too early for the season to be written off.
Well, I actually am taking heart in the fact that North Melbourne are so high up on the ladder because we've beaten a top 4 team.
Yeah, we have.
It's a feather in our cap. I'm being positive for once. But what else can we talk about? We've done the changes. Big game this week. Can we turn it around? Or are we going to play Essendon back into form, as we've done before?
Well, they've got a day less than we do to prepare, and they suffered 2 injuries today.
Who was injured?
I think Green and is either Bagley or Begley. And McDonald, Tip and Woody went into today's game quite sore, so he might be, might be a little bit below his best too. So I don't see any reason why we can't get back onto the winners list this weekend.
We're playing.
Yeah, I take the same view. I really think I still, despite the disappointment and sort of, emotional letdown of the game just gone, I still don't think we're too far off, and I think it's not going to be long before we kick into gear and actually start winning games again. I'm not too worried.
Well, we're back at our favourite stadium, Etihad Stadium, this week. Perhaps being under that closed roof will do us some good.
It was good to see. And I know he didn't have a great game, but it was good to see Jaden Hunt start running again and taking players on. He also slipped and tripped a few times and didn't dispose of it particularly well, but he at least started to get that back into his game. We hadn't seen that for a while, so it was pleasing to see that.
He was out on the ground quite a bit before the game started, doing some dashes along the wing and into the forward 50 and having shots for goal. You sort of could see that he was really preparing for a big one. My criticism of him is still the same. It's not really a criticism, but I think sometimes he's running way too fast and doesn't lower his eyes and just sort of kicks in and often will miskick it. But it was good to see him get that run back because we've sort of missed that running. We haven't had someone like him while he's been out. So, yeah.
That'll come with experience, I expect. I mean, he hasn't been around long. We've got to, again, kind of like the point I made with Stretch. You can't compare him to players who have been around the system a long time. I think after watching the Hawthorn game, someone like Isaac Smith is the sort of player that Hunt could become, who can really dash through and damage. But you're right. I mean, he does miss kick it a fair bit, which is unfortunate. But I'm prepared to give him time.
Yep.
Well, boys, is there anything else you want to bring up? Anything else you've seen pop up on Demonland during the week that needs some discussion?
Well, Unleash Hell has just commented in the chat room, do we underestimate how even the league is this year? And I think that's a fair comment. I think it's very even across the board. So that's not a bad point.
Yeah, it is an even competition, but I'm not sure whether that's going to help.
I mean, even last round, no one was undefeated, which is very unusual. So,
it's
we'll
not.
I'd just like to point out my favourite Demonland thread currently on the front page. It's titled "Nathan Jones is the problem."
Yeah, thank you for
discuss.
Thank you for bringing that up. I noticed that today. I think someone was a first-time poster, and welcome to first-time posters. And certainly that's a great topic to come in with your first post. But we welcome all new members to Demonland. If you are listening to this podcast,
that gets mentioned every time we lose, though. Nathan Jones is the problem. He's not a leader's bootstrap. What a great player, but he can't lead. And rah.
This is the post. I'm sorry to Jones for saying this. This is not me. This is Coldy21 with his first post. I'm sorry to Jones for saying this, but because he's been a warrior for the club, but I don't think he's the best captain. He talks about some footage that he watched, when Jonesy was mic'd up during a game. He seems unnatural and just plain annoying, to be honest. The way he tries to motivate the players, I think, is more suited to a boxing gym than a footy team. When you're training to fight a one-on-one battle, it's good to be screamed at and get angry, but not when you're playing a team sport. I just feel the way he goes about it is creating disharmony in the team. Everyone keeps blaming the coach after coach, but maybe it's not the coaches when we have the same problem through multiple coaches. We always drop off dramatically without Viney, and obviously he adds to the team with his skills. But I think it's a lot more than that he offers. I think it's the way he motivates the players in a slightly different way to Jones that's the biggest difference. Obviously, Jones is a great player, but I don't think he should be captain. I think he's just a bit too tough and tries a bit too hard. Leadership isn't natural to him, and despite the effort he puts into the captaincy, he's still not natural when which has a negative effect on the whole team.
How does he know?
I don't know.
With respect to Coldy21, we're always keen to have new posters on board, but that is absolute garbage dressed as somebody trying to come across as being balanced. So there's comments like, I just feel the way he goes about it is creating disharmony in the team. Now, that's just saying, I feel, and then stating something as if it's fact. You can't draw the fact that you don't enjoy the way he sounds when he's on a microphone. You can't then draw a conclusion that it's creating disharmony in the team. And his last sentence is very similar. Leadership isn't natural to him, and despite the effort that he's put into the captaincy, he's still not natural Okay, fine. That's got no problem with that. Next line, which has a negative effect on the whole team. Well, how would you know, mate? That's just rubbish.
I think that's just emotion talking. You know, he's obviously very pissed off about the game he's come on and vented. I think leaders, it's not always just their voices. Sometimes it's, you know, them leading by example as well. So I don't know. Unless you're out on the ground, I don't think you can just look at a bit of footage where Jones was mic'd up one week, and I'm not sure when that was, that he was mic'd up. And you know,
it was a couple of years ago now.
Yeah, so you don't know what the circumstances of that particular game. So unless you see him mic'd up every week and you're actually out on the field, I don't put much credence in that. Drunken in the chat room said, did anyone hear the Gawn interview a few weeks ago where he said Jones saved his career and said he should be a legend of the club? So, yeah.
Well, by the same token, there are a couple of other posts during the week. One was 3 seconds of video footage of Simon Goodwin in the coach's box in the last quarter of the Hawthorn game, where people just drew these wild conclusions about what he was doing or not doing and what he was thinking or not thinking. And then there was a still photograph of Jake Lever getting tackled in the Hawthorn game, and Max was far in the distance in the background, and people drawing conclusions about what Max was thinking and should or should not have been doing. And the conclusions that people were drawing are just absolutely crazy. And to make pretend to make any kind of informed assessment of those things of such scant evidence.
I think part of the problem is that as footy supporters, and it doesn't matter whether you go to the game or watch on TV or, you know, live and breathe it or you only watch sometimes, we actually, all we see is an outcome of a million things that are happening, and we actually don't know what's happening most of the time. You know, we don't know what instructions players are getting. We don't know what conversations they're having behind the scenes. We don't know any of that. And some people realise that they don't know that. And for me, one of the things I love about the forum is it's the opportunity to try and flesh that out. But some people just, you know, their imaginations just go wild and they land on the most outlandish possible conclusion that you could come up with based on that scenario. When that's probably not what happened. Like, it's probably most of the time just something more simple than that.
Yep.
Well, what do they say about opinions and arseholes? Everyone's got one. There was another a thread started that D. Zephyr said a few premium members are angry about a room given to the sponsors. Did you guys see this thread started today? It's by poster Umpires Please. As a 20-year Redlegs family member, I was disappointed that the club has sold off one of the rooms that our membership level gets to use during our home games. We were informed last night that we will not have access to the Lindsay Hassett room for our biggest home game against Collingwood on Queen's birthday because PJ and his team have sold it to a sponsor. So I'm assuming that the Lindsay Hassett room, Grapevine, is that on the opposite side of the ground?
Yes.
So that's in the southern stand.
Yes.
So that's for the Red Leg membership. There's obviously a room that's behind the seats there on level 2 that is open to the members of that particular for normal home games, and obviously for the Queen's birthday, the club's probably I would assume to
sold it off to sponsors.
They've either sold it to the sponsors or given it to the sponsors to use as part of the whole, you know, sponsorship deal. So do you have a problem with the club doing that? Obviously, those members, well, there are some members do, because a lot of people have replied to this thread saying they're going to be emailing the club about them not being happy about that.
Yeah, I think the issue is that the
communication.
The fact that it's the communication, but it's changing. It's changing the parameters mid-year. So you sign up at the beginning of the year and you expecting certain things that are part of the membership, and then it gets changed on you mid-year is probably a bit disappointing. It's only the one game, but it's the big game, and as many people have said in the thread, it's the game that they like to bring friends and family to, or mates from the country who come to the G for the day. So I can understand the frustration at that.
I agree, especially when you're paying for an expensive membership package. I think you don't want to have the benefits pulled out from under you at the last minute. I think that's pretty poor, to be honest. Yeah. It doesn't affect me at all, but I can understand the frustration. I reckon that's no good.
Yeah, I think one of the main gripes that they had is there has been absolutely no communication about that. There was no email sent out, nothing. I think they found out yesterday at the game. I'm not sure how they found out, but that seems a little bit poor, the communications a breakdown there. And I can see why they're upset. Last chance, if you do want to get on the show and vent, 0390163666 or Demonland 31 on the Skype. We would love to hear from you. Boys, anything else? Anything else that you want to vent about that you can't vent anywhere else except to other tragic Demon fans?
I've done most of my venting. I think I'm gonna go back to my usual normal optimism now. I feel better. We're gonna pump Essendon next week.
I need some of what you're drinking there because I'm the opposite. I'm doom and gloom at the moment. I'm not looking forward to the next month. Because, I don't know. I'm in the doldrums at the moment. I was expecting a lot. Look, we were up against the reigning premiers. That wasn't a game that I'd probably mark down as a win. I'm probably more.
They're very good, Richmond.
They are. I mean, when they were running the ball, they look good at times, and
and we did frustrate them for 3 and a bit quarters.
Maybe that's why I was so upset with the way it ended, because when we got within a kick, I thought we were going to get our noses in front, and then it was sort of anyone's game. But I don't know. We lay down again, and that gets me.
Look, I've got to be honest. Despite what I just said, my confidence has been eroded a fair bit by the way that these last 2 games have finished, and I agree. And it was really just the way it ended when we'd looked at least competent for at least within reach of the game for the majority of it, and then for it to just vanish in the blink of an eye. But like Grab said, Richmond are a very, very good side, and it's actually quite hard to say. We focus on the one team because we barrack for that team, but we tend to ignore what the opposition does quite a bit. You can't look past the fact that we played probably the form side of the competition, and they are a very good side. So how much of that final quarter was us rolling over, and how much of it was just them being too good?
And we suppressed their stars. Dusty Martin was good, but didn't dominate like he can. Cochin, Rewalt, Rance. So they're good across the board.
Dusty's taking the piss with these fans, isn't he? Surely he can't be as hard to tackle as he is. I mean, obviously he is because nobody ever tackles him. But I'm sure I saw in that last quarter, I saw him do 4 of those in a row, and none of our blokes could get him. It was just amazing.
You don't. None of our players can do that.
No.
Petrarca can. Petrarca can, and I think he's done it. But
he doesn't even get tackled. Petrarca, he's just sort of wiry. He sort of gets around, like he can get through. Like Dusty actually puts his arm out and just pushes away people.
I mean, he's basically developed this new feature to the game, and he's completely sort of he's getting sort of a tremendous advantage out of it because no one can seem to counter it, no matter what they do.
He gets away with pushing people in the face a little bit too, though. That's my only complaint about it. But
yeah, it can go high.
Yeah.
He also gets a bit of an armchair ride from the umps because there were a few times that he got tackled and actually dropped the ball and did not get a free. I actually thought, and we talked about it a little bit before the show started, that we thought that we didn't get the best of the umpires, not blaming that for a loss, and for me, it's often the frees we don't get that I find that kill us the most. But I thought the umps killed the game at one stage.
It's just the inconsistent application of the holding the ball or dropping the ball or prior opportunity, where sometimes you get no time at all to get rid of it and you get pinged. And then on other occasions, they let the play go for 3 or 4 seconds. And a player will have multiple opportunities to get rid of it, and they still call play on. And I think the other one that is ridiculous in my mind, and we probably got the good end of it last night, is deliberate. Most of the times that they pay deliberate are just absurd. They're hurried kicks from the back line under pressure, and just because there's no one there, it gets called deliberate. Whereas the players most of the time can't even see where they're kicking, let alone deliberately going for the boundary line. I hate that.
Yeah, there's a few times that they penalise a bad kick.
Yeah, exactly. Often they penalise a bad kick, or a pressured kick.
Well, I don't know. I think we might leave it there. It's a big month of football ahead for us. We've got to turn it around. We've definitely got the I'll say in inverted commas, the easier teams to come in the next couple of weeks. Got to make the most of it, Dees, and get back on that winners board. Grapeviney, thank you. Nasher, thank you.
Thank you.
Hope you were able to vent, guys, and hopefully next week we can talk about happier times. All right, we'll be back next week, same time, same place, on the Demonland podcast. Go Days.